All right, we're recording and we're full
Fantastic.
screen. Okay, so I just want to
Hello.
introduce you. Everyone, I'm Andrea, and I obviously do a lot of parenting and nutrition related videos on this channel. Let me just grab my water. But I can't claim to be an expert. However, someone who I've been advised by is here with me today. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh,
So I'm Dr. Pamela Fergusson, and I'm a registered dietitian. I have a PhD in nutrition, and that's what gives me the doctor part. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have a PhD, and I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm in private practice.
and I wanted to just have some discussion with you today, ask you some questions that frequently come up with me and with other vegan parents. And hopefully we can, learn some new things, or I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's another important thing to say about myself. I'm vegan,
Okay.
and I work with all types of eaters, so I don't only work with people who are vegan, but I do work with a lot of vegan and families, people who are raising vegan kids. I have seen a lot of that in my practice.
Okay, wonderful. So I think this first question might be a bit redundant in lieu of that, but I just wanted to ask you, is it safe to raise children from infancy on a plant-based diet? Like never ever having animal foods?
That's a great question, and I never think that question is redundant, actually, because people do really wonder that, and the answer is that it is absolutely safe to raise children on a completely vegan diet, but it should be a well-planned vegan diet.
Okay.
And the the thing is that a vegan diet is safe for all stages of life: pregnancy, infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, older adulthood. But we do need to eat a well planned diet that includes foods from across the whole spectrum of vegan food. So, what I would think of as different vegan food groups: fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and pulses like lentils and beans. So
Okay.
when we're eating from across that full spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
vegan foods, then absolutely um, we can be very healthy. Now, we'll get into details about how to work up to that when we're
Mm-hmm.
starting with an infant, and also where we need to supplement. And with any kind of diet that you eat, there are times where a supplement is valuable,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk about on a vegan diet particularly what is useful to supplement, especially for children.
Okay. And you and I have previously done a video on supplements that I can link in the description of
Great.
this video, and it will likely come up again in our discussion. So that does bring me to our next question. Like, as a parent raising my child on a plant-based diet, should I focus on any nutrients in particular when I begin to introduce foods and then carrying on from that? Or should I just say, okay, I'm giving them a variety, it should be good enough? Or should I say, oh, this, I should have a high iron thing in every meal or a high protein, or, what are your views on that? Or what's the research on that?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that. I want to um, have us remember that when we are first introducing foods to an infant, um, they are still using either breast milk or formula as their primary source of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So solids are important to introduce developmentally so that a child learns how to eat, learns how to swallow well. That's actually something we need to learn, is how to swallow solids. And if we don't learn it in that window between sort of 4 to 6 months, um, it can be harder to learn to swallow well later. So that's important. Also, we're learning just to accept solids, to play with food, to understand different textures, smells, tastes. it's a whole new sensory experience, and that's part of what a child is getting out of eating solids. So there's the nutrition side, but there's also the developmental side. And yes, it is important to think about certain nutrients. We do want to think about iron. If you have been breastfeeding, that's wonderful, but breast milk is quite low in iron. Now, the iron that's in breast milk is quite bioavailable, quite easily absorbed. But when it's time for your child to start eating solids, it's a good time to pay attention to giving iron-rich foods.
Okay.
Yeah, so an iron-fortified baby cereal, like an oat cereal, or mashed lentils that are cooked very soft, are great choices. Pair that with some vitamin C, like an orange section that they can suck on, that kind of thing. Squeeze a little lime on top of the lentils to enhance the absorption of the iron with vitamin C.
Okay.
Fat is another one, and we hear a lot of, oh, your child has to have dairy milk. They have to have cow's milk because they won't get enough fat otherwise. Mm-hmm. And really, there's plenty of sources of fat on a vegan diet. Mm-hmm. We do not need to look to cow's milk, and certainly healthier sources. I mean, really all the recommendations are to choose sources of fat that are lower in saturated fats and richer in mono and polyunsaturated fats. So really those are plant-based fats. And so avocados, nuts, and seed butters. Now at this stage you probably want to introduce the butters rather than the actual nuts because they would be too hard and would present a choking risk.
Yes.
So you could blend nuts or seeds into your child's food, like make a curry, for example, and blend it. Or you could offer like a peanut butter or a sunflower seed butter, a cashew butter, and coconut milk is another source of fat as well. There's a little more saturated fat there, but if your child's eating a plant-based diet, their intake of saturated fat overall will be very low. Okay. So don't worry about that. Okay. You can always drizzle a little coconut milk on top of their food, or maybe make a smoothie for them that includes coconut milk as a source of fat.
Okay. So generally,
and protein, yes, of course. Okay. Protein is important. I almost left protein out because, we just sort of are always hearing, where do you get your protein? But really, getting sources of protein is quite easy on a plant-based diet. Most of our foods do contain protein, but the more protein-rich sources are going to come from lentils and beans and nuts and seeds. So hummus, I often recommend hummus as a good early food.
Everest loves hummus, yeah.
Exactly. You can make it yourself if you're a little bit, wanting to be cautious about the ingredients. You can make it yourself, but it's also fine to buy it from the supermarket if you're strapped for time. But hummus is great because it has a lot of protein, has a lot of iron, has a lot of calcium, and it has vitamin C because of the lemon that's in the recipe. Okay. So it's a wonderful first food, and I will just share a personal note that was actually my daughter's very first food. When she was exclusively breastfed until 6 months of age, and we were in Jordan actually when she turned 6 months old. Because I traveled for work at that time. I was living in the States and had very little maternity leave. When Fern was 6 months old, she'd been to 12 countries. So we were in Jordan, and they had like quite a savory breakfast, it was like a breakfast bar with kind of tomatoes and olives, like Mediterranean style kind of, and hummus was there. So I was like, okay, let's give her some hummus, and we have a photo of her with just like hummus all over her face. So when at her 6th birthday, absolutely, so cute. Yeah, she was into it right from the start.
Okay, so those there wouldn't be anything like other than those, like how about ones like zinc or vitamin A or K, anything else that you think needs any extra focus?
I don't know about extra focus, but those are important nutrients. But absolutely, as long as you are choosing a variety of foods. And don't get too, again, remember, like at 6 months of age when you're just starting, or maybe you start introducing solids at 5 months of age, depending on the developmental stage of your child, and what you and your pediatrician feel, and what you want to do with your child. But remember that they are still getting the majority of their nutrition from breast milk or from
Formula.
Sorry, thank you. And that you don't need to worry like, oh no, my child had only peas at lunch today, and they need to also have some nuts and seeds and some fruits and vegetables, and they need a whole range. That's okay at the start. Like, it's okay to take things slowly at the start and build up. But by the time your child is a year old, it certainly would be great to see them having those more balanced meals with, including the full range. And even at that younger age, it would be nice to see that across the day, they were getting a range of those foods. So zinc, for example, we just brought up, as long as they're getting pulses like lentils and beans, they'll be getting zinc there. They'll be getting zinc from nuts and seeds. So I don't know if they need to focus specifically on zinc. Iodine is one other nutrient that we do sometimes pay special attention to. You can, as your child grows a little older, start using a very small amount of iodized table salt in your cooking or at the table. Iodized table salt has kind of gone out of fashion, and people are really into like Himalayan salts and these beautiful salts that can add a lot to your cooking. But if they're not iodized, you do put yourself at increased risk of developing iodine deficiency. So for your whole family, you might want to add just a small amount of table salt into your food. Or if you're really not wanting to do that, that's also fine, but then you might want to look for an iodine supplement for your child.
Okay. I've been using like dulse and kelp for iodine.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
So that's great. Those are certainly very rich in iodine. The risk almost is getting almost too much iodine there. So just use those quite sparingly. They're very rich in iodine, and the other thing is it's not consistent. Like, you might get sort of one pinch and that might have some iodine, and another pinch might have quite a bit more from a different batch.
Okay.
So I would say absolutely those are great whole food sources, but use them sparingly because they can be very, very rich in iodine.
Okay, very good to know. Okay, so I see in a lot of the parenting groups, a lot of people saying you should absolutely not cook your food in oil. You shouldn't be giving any processed foods. There's a lot of stuff about avoiding gluten, a lot of stuff about avoiding soy. So should any of those foods be avoided,
No, I would say, I can't give specific advice to any parents who's listening right now. If you have questions about your individual child, maybe you've noticed perhaps a reaction or intolerance to soy or gluten, that's a different situation. But generally speaking, assuming no intolerances, then none of those foods should be avoided. And in fact, all contain a lot of good nutrition. Soy is just, it has such a bad reputation. We could talk about soy for ages, but really, let's just remember that soy is just another bean. Like, people love chickpeas and some reason are down on soy, and I don't really know how that happened. Soy is just a bean, and it's in fact kind of a miracle bean because it's rich in healthy fats as well as being rich in protein, where most other beans don't really have a lot of fat. Mm-hmm. So we're getting the fiber, we're getting the fat, the healthy fat, we're getting the protein, we're getting the micronutrients there as well. Mm-hmm. So soy is just really such a fantastic source of nutrition for your children. You don't have to include soy. I'm not saying you must, but I'm saying you're really missing out on such an easy nutritional source of all of those nutrients for your child. for example, in edamame, if you're really wanting to eat as little processed food as possible, choose edamame, frozen edamame. Very easy, just run it under a bit of hot water